In episode 79 of Greenhorn Gardening, I interviewed Mary Toney about life on an old southern cotton farm, and for the growing tip, I share an old southern recipe for chicken and dumplings. Welcome to greenhorngardening.com. I'm Damon, and I'm on a mission to help you grow your own vegetable garden. So, let me ask you something. I got something new, guys, and I want to ask, do you guys use tools, specifically hand tools in your garden? And, the reason I'm asking is because, in getting ready for this year's growing season, I just sitting around thinking, and there are about 5 tools that I use a lot around the garden, a lot. And I put together this little resource guide, and if you guys have the time, check out greenhorngardening.com/top tools to get the top 5 garden tools for the 2013 growing season. And let me know what you guys think about that, okay? Okay, so I want to do real quick before we get into the main subject. Wanted to do a kind of a clarification, if you will. About a month ago, no, about the beginning of January, I released the 2013 Garden Calendar and Growing Journal, and I think thanks a lot of you guys who bought that and let me know how it's working out for you, because I always want to know how things are going, and that that the information that you guys are receiving is helping you, and because the number one thing here at Greenhorn Gardening is to grow gardeners, right? So, but I wanted to do a quick clarification, just ever so quickly. The products that I sell, the training products and the guides and things like that, one, they go to help bringing the free content, like here the podcast and the YouTube videos and the various tools and things like that it takes to keep Greenhorn Gardening going. But a lot of those products, in fact all of them to this point, have been electronic products only, where they you buy the product and it downloads directly to your computer. And I know a lot of you are using iPads and iPhones and various mobile devices now. A lot of things are changed, so I'm having to kind of reconfigure and do some things here behind the scenes, and a lot of behind the scenes work goes on. So for those of you who bought the 2013 Garden Calendar and Growing Journal, just keep in mind that that is an electronic product only. And so if you guys have bought the product and you maybe the link for whatever the download didn't work for you for whatever reason, sometimes these things happen, but just shoot me an email at damon@greenhorngardening.com and I can give you the link there. But and that's okay. Just want to make sure. I just want to make sure everybody. I mean, if you purchase one of the products, I want to make sure you get it. I want to make sure you're satisfied with it. And like with everything else, if you get it and for 30 days, if you don't like it, just send me a message and say, hey, look, this isn't for me, and can you have a refund? And that's okay. I'm perfectly willing to do that, because I want to, like I say, growing gardeners is the most important thing, and so. And that's what those training products are designed to do. So with that, let's see what else is going on. A lot of rain. I don't know about how it is in your area, but it has been so rainy. I just haven't been able to get out and work the soil. I'm really in a lot of ways already behind on my lettuce garden. By now I would have things. But as I was out filming a video, actually just yesterday, for the upcoming springtime a growers course online. Hopefully I can get that out to you guys in the not so distant future, so keep a lookout for that. And like I say, it's been so wet. It's hard to get out there and work the soil when it's just a bunch of mud. Now I use raised beds primarily, and even the raised beds are too wet. I mean, when the raised beds are too wet, it's a lot of rain. But not to just complain, but to really say that it has been very difficult in my area these past 2 years, because we have had a massive drought, and it has not been it's been hard, and I've been talking to some farmers, and they're saying, "Yep, no doubt the drought's broken now." So okay, but so that's good, and so that bodes well. Hopefully, it'll start drying out some, and the weather gets right, and we can get out there and get some things going. So right now in the Greenhorn Garden, we've got if you look at the videos, on the latest videos on YouTube, had to put a seed saving lesson about saving purple-topped turnip seeds, and I never knew that those things grew out in almost a bean pod like thing, and so that was kind of neat to watch that process too as well, and also to the cover crop of crimson clover the crimson clover is finally beginning to sprout. You've seen those nice little crimson red colored flowers on it, and it looks beautiful, and then the hairy vetch will probably here in another couple of months start excuse me. Hairy vetch has those nice purple flowers on there, and they'll start blooming, and hopefully we can get that all going in and turned in, and have all that big pile of topsoil to use, because I'm going to add some more raised beds and some of my what I call my big. Those of you who went through the raised bed growing mastery course, and that course is still available there on the e-store if you guys want to go check it out. Let's see, it's a I'll probably do my what I call my big box beds, and probably add some more of those with that big old thing of topsoil that I had about a year ago. And so we're looking forward to expanding the garden, and as well as continuing to try to in filming a lot of that process. A lot of that process ends up incorporated into the various training courses and things that you guys buy, and like I say, I definitely appreciate you guys buying the products here. And so with that, why not let's just jump on straight on into the interview. All right. Hey everybody, this is Damon at Greenhorn Gardening. I got Miss Toney on the line, otherwise you guys know as dear old mom, that I'm always talking about. You always hear me talking about my grandmother in the old days, and how back in those days you didn't call it organic gardening or farming. It was that's just the way they did things 100 years ago, until all this modern mechanized everything. And so I've got some of you have been asking for some recipes. We may talk about some of that, and probably have to do that more so in the future, because some of those things, a lot of things you do by hand, but we're going to talk about old times, what it was like on the cotton farm. And so hey mom, welcome to the show.
Hello, Damon.
Hey. Now, I remember I was just little. How old was I? Was I 4 or 5 years old back when Stella was living with us? Or
just about that age.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I remember. It's been it's more of a memory now. I mean, it's hard to picture her in my mind now, but I know she was there, because I remember all you guys telling us about it. Now you grew up in Wilcox County, Alabama, which is about which is south central Alabama, rural place, poor. And tell us about what it was like in that time after the Depression and all that.
Well, after the Depression, things were pretty rough. Most people who didn't own their own land had a hard time of survival, and they could hardly make it to make ends meet from one meal to the next. But if you had your own land, you could grow your own food. So I grew up in a situation where we grew our own food. We grew our vegetables, we grew our meats, we grew everything we ate. Back in the yesteryears, I suppose, day would begin at the beginning. You get up before the sun rise, and when the sun rose, you were already in the field. I have picked cotton. I have picked peas. I've husked corn. We plied with a mule. I can remember old Dan and Nat. And we had a very successful, happy life. We had chickens, so we had our own eggs and our poultry. We had cows. We had our own milk and butter. We had goats. We had hogs. So the hog killing was a major event for me. You got up early in the morning, way before day. You made a fire around a big wash pot and boil the water. And then the men would go out to the hog pen and kill the hog. Then they would stab him and let him bleed so excessive blood would run from his body. And then they'd take the mule and drag the hog up to the wash pots, and they'd scald the hog so that we could scrape the hair from the skin part, the good old cracklings that you buy in the Golden Flake bags now. We made ours. So we would clean that hog. We used everything about the hog. We made our own ham. We ground our own sausages. We cooked the skin and the fat portion made crackling, and we had our own cooking oil and lard. We had to get herbs from out in the forest and the sage and other herbs from the garden to put in the homemade ground pork sausages, what you call Tennessee Pride and Rudy Farms. We made ours. Matter of fact, I made some last week for myself because I made mine from a wild hog instead of a hog that was in a pen. After it would take sometime 2 to 3 days to work up a hog. You would cut him up, and then you'd have the portions that you would pack down in the salt. You let it stay in salt for 2 weeks. After the meat stayed in salt for 2 weeks, you took it out and you made another big fire around the pot. You boil it and you dip the meat into the boiling hot water. And then you dried it with old fertilized sack rags. We didn't have paper towel as you have now. And we put those strips in it. We got the strips out of the forest. It was a plant that grew, and it's a very strong plant. We would slip it through the meat and hang it up in the smokehouse. And once we put it in the smokehouse, we would smoke that meat and those homemade link sausages. We either use hickory, china wood, hickory, pecan, oak, and that was the best tasting meat and the most healthiest meat that you can eat. A lot of people back in that day didn't know what hypertension was, high blood pressure, and all of these type 2 diabetes and etc. That's because you eat so much of chemicals now, and your body cannot detox all of those chemicals. They stored up into your body, and it has to do something, so it just create a disease for you. And this hog killing was followed by a good old time syrup making. We made our own syrup. We grew our sugar cane. We stripped the cane. We stripped the sugar cane. And then after stripping it, we would take it down to the mill. And then we'd hook old Dan or old Ned up to the grinder, and they would walk around in a circle all day. We would grind that sugar cane and make juice out of it. Once it got to be made into a juice, then we had a big old cook pan. We put it in the pan and we put a big fire. It had huge logs burning, and this would cook, and you had to skim the foam from it so that we could have some good clear syrup. And once we got it cooked, and it cooked, and they tested it, and it tested all right, somebody at the house would bring down some biscuits and a little old plate, and somebody would test the syrup to see it was ready to eat. Then we would put it in those gallon cans, and some of that stuff we skimmed off of the cooking syrup. We put it in a barrel. Back in that day, you had some people out there in the country who were moonshiners. They took that and they made moonshine from it. Everything in the country was used. Back to the hog. We even took the hog hair. We put it in the fireplace and broiled it. We made tea. We took the hooves from the hog feet. We broiled them. We made tea. All of this was good for the body. Nothing was wasted. About everything was consumed. Only thing that really went down the hill was the feed that was inside the intestines of the hog, what you call chitlins now. We call them hog guts. That's what they are, hog guts. But Fancy, they're chitlins because that's what Winn-Dixie wants you to call 'em. We would clean these. We cleaned them ourselves, removed the feces from it and washed them and scraped them and soaked them a day or two. And then we cooked those and we ate those too. I know one time one of my sons came home with a recipe. It found in the library of the University of Alabama how to fry southern chitlins. And it was so funny to me. This is what we grew up on. But they thought it was something new. And I had to fry some southern chitlins. After you boiled them and battered them in the meal, the pepper and the salt, you fried them. And they are delicious. So we didn't lose anything about the hog. We took the feet and the ears and the head, boil that in a big pot. You made that stuff what you eat at the football game while you sitting in your den, sauce meat. And we called it hog head cheese. We made our own. We didn't buy it from Ziegler's. We made it. And then when we had time, we would rest. You'd sit out there on the porch. We call it sitting on the Gary. It went all the way around the house from the front part, across the side, back to the back part. And you'd sit around on the Gary at night. And if we had no radio, TV hadn't even been invented. Oh my God, you kids would went crazy because they didn't know what a cell phone was. We would sit there and tell stories. Our entertainment was telling stories. We told ghost stories. We told fish stories. We told hunting stories. And then we told stories about real life. And this was a great, great entertainment. Somebody else would come out with a pan full of parched peanuts. You call them roasted peanuts. We call them parched peanuts. And we would just sit there, eat those peanuts in the fall, and tell those stories. In the summertime, we sat on that same porch. We ate watermelon, spit the seeds, and still told our stories. Every time you had to get a drink of cold water, you had to go to the well and let the bucket down, pull it up, or either go to the spring and dip it up and drink it. There was no refrigerator. There wasn't an ice box. But we were healthy, strong. We are the backbones of America. America appreciate us. And today you got a few of us left. I still make my cornmeal. I still have my garden. I got about what the city allowed me to have, about 5 hens and a rooster. I got my eggs. I got just about everything I need. And when I get real low in meat, I can hit the woods of Wilcox County and find a wild hog. Wild hog is the best meat that you could eat. It's healthy. The hog eat only the roots and the acorns and the nuts that fall from the trees, and he has not been boosted up with steroids. Just a good old piece of enjoyable meat. The old times back in the cotton field, we had to get up. We had a big old orchard going down the middle of the cotton field. This orchard had apple trees, all kinds of apple trees. It had plum trees, peach trees, persimmon trees. It had just about everything you would want in the line of a fruit. If you got up and you didn't want to eat the homemade Harmony grits with the fat back cooked on the wooden stove, you could just go out into the cotton field in the middle of it where that fruit orchard was and just go from tree to tree and eat yourself sick. And then you didn't have to eat those Harmony grits if you didn't want to. Just live on fruit. People nowadays have to go to the store to buy everything they need. That's why we have so much cancer. That's why we have so much high blood pressure. That's why we have so much type 2 diabetes and all of this. I'm not bragging, but At this point, I'm 75 years old. I don't have heart condition. I don't have diabetes. I don't have cancer. I don't have any of those diseases. I try to raise as much of my vegetables as I can. And I try to eat things like squirrel, rabbit, wild deer. Oh, deer steaks are delicious. It's nothing but the same as a beef steak. We enjoy the things that God created in this world for man to eat, which keeps him living to be about 100 years old. I believe my mother was about 96 when she passed. God rest her soul. If she had not moved to Mobile, she'd stayed in the country, she'd have made 100. Country life is hard work, real hard work. Nowadays, you got modern equipment and modern technology. They grow the food and they grow it so fast, but your organic gardens that you can have on your patio or on your side of your window or any place in your yard will help you live a long, beautiful, healthy life. Now I'm talking about recipes. Recipes we just cooked. You take, if you wanted to make a cake, I say, you take about a cup of sugar, 2 cups of flour, maybe 4 teaspoons of baking powder, a pinch of salt, and about 2/3 cup of cow butter. Real butter, the kind you buy when Dixie, but the kind we made from the buttermilk. You will get some of those yard eggs out of the barnyard and you whip all this stuff up and put it in the stove and you're still living and eating healthy. And the doctors tell you now you can't eat too much sweets. But you know, we took sometime honey, wild honey, not the honey in the beehives that you have in your backyards or the honeybee people make. We got the wild honey out the woods, and that's what we sweeten a lot of our desserts with. Pure wild honey. Honey has the bees fly all over the forest. On their wings, they collect all type of pollen and nectar, and they go into the beehive and they produce this honey, and all those herbs that they bring back on their little fluttering wings is good for the body. I guess if you wanted to make some hot stirred biscuits, you'd take about 2 cups of flour, 2/3 cups of buttermilk, and 2 or 3 spoons of baking powder. Throw it in a pan and get you about a half a teaspoon or a pinch of salt, whatever you might like. Stir it up, blend it up, and then add more flour to it, and just make you some biscuits. Roll it out and cook them yourself. You don't have to buy McDonald's biscuits. Make your own. Now you got recipes that you share on the computer and everything else. You can still take plain flour. I don't like to use saffron flour. Plain flour, and get you a recipe off of one of those computers and make your own biscuits. Now, a cotton day will start in the field, I guess, about 5 o'clock in the morning. You were out there already in the field. You start picking. At least if you couldn't pick 100 pounds a day, you wasn't a good picker. Lord, that was some long, hard work. But as we worked, we joked, we talked, we told stories, we sang, and we enjoyed. And after a long day's work, to come back home, to sit around on the gallery and share those stories, everybody had to go at least twice a day to the dinner table. You went to the dinner table with the whole family. Everybody in the family sat around the table. Everybody told and explained his day. Maybe John was working down in the swamp on Tiger Creek. You wanted to know how he fared with that cut. There was somebody else up on the hill up there where the peanuts were. They had to tell their story and what happened. And then there was somebody else might have just been working around, kneeling around out in the barn where the calves were. They told their stories. And Mama told hers as she cooked and worked the kitchen and as she left the kitchen and went back to the field. Your daddy told his story. Everybody shared their stories, their problems, and there were very, very little committing of suicide or high depression, manic depression. We didn't have that. We didn't even know what that was. Because if you had a problem down in the swamp, in the morning, all of us were going to go down there and help you get your problem straightened out. If you had the problem on top of the hill in the peanut field, all of us were going to go up there and help you straighten that problem out. That's what a family is for. A family that prays together will stay together. We had to pray hard, very hard. I still have prayer on Sunday morning. Every Sunday morning, we have to gather around the kitchen table and pray. That's a family tradition. If people keep those family traditions together here in America, and that's what America is all about, being free, freedom, that's your freedom. And we came here because we were seeking freedom and religious freedom. Therefore, if we continue to do this, America will remember to be the best and the biggest, strongest nation in God's created world.
All right, so this week's growing tip is a recipe. Some of you have been asking about how to, give us some southern recipes, good old southern recipes, right? Well, I'll tell you one recipe that is a classic that will never die is called chicken and dumplings. Now, it once again, I don't have a lot of measurements and things like that because one of the things about southern cooking is that you kind of do things by hand, and you kind of know what a tablespoon is just because that's how much it is, or a teaspoon or whatever. You just know because you've cooked so much and so often. You just know what they are, and you just say, okay, that's about how much I need. But so I'm going to try to describe how to cook chicken and dumplings actually without having to explain all these different things like that. Now, chicken and dumplings is a kind of soup. It's it's typically cooked after Thanksgiving around my parts, usually after Thanksgiving and Christmas when you have a lot of leftover turkey or chicken or even something like a duck or something. Sometimes you have a duck on Christmas, but mostly chicken and turkey. And it's kind of a leftover dish. A lot of southern cooking, at least when I grew up, how do you take and make things out of leftovers and have a whole different meal, and it's just as good as it were cooked fresh. So with chicken and dumplings, guess what? You're going to need some chicken or some turkey, some sort of a white meat bird. I guess some of you got quail or whatever, you can use that as well, but you take that and you just put it in some water and you boil it. I put pepper. I usually put black pepper. I usually put a little white pepper. You definitely got to put some salt in it. And let's say if you had some baked chicken, you could just put the baked chicken in there and then that's it. You don't have to add, because the chicken already has the seasonings on it, but it just depends on what you like. But definitely salt and pepper are your primary seasonings for that. But me, let's see. Is that correct? You can also put some celery in it if you want, but that's typically not how it goes. It's a very simple recipe, usually salt, black pepper, but I always add basil and or coriander seeds to mine, and that just gives it another kind of flavoring because once again, you want to put as much stuff in my garden as possible, and I almost every time I cook any kind of soup dish is going to have basil in it, or it's going to have coriander seed or whatever, or here's another thing to put in it that's perfect. Thyme with celery. If you've got thyme, grow some thyme, put some thyme in it and celery. Again, these are things that you would have in your garden that you would put in here, and you don't necessarily want to go out to the store and buy it. You grow it in your garden, you put it in. So I would either season it with thyme and celery, or I do basil, coriander. Just depends on what I feel like doing. Don't ask me how much I put in there. I just know how much it's supposed to go because I know how much basil is too much and know how little is too little. Now, usually my herbs are always dried. I actually prefer dried herbs as opposed to fresh out of the garden. So I usually pick them up, let them dry, and then put them in. It just, I don't know. I just like it like that better. It just looks cooler, you know. But anyway, the dumplings, you take about a cup of flour. You take about about half a teaspoon of salt, and let's see, and some water, and that's about it. You know, you make it up just to a consistency of a biscuit dough. Now, dear old mom, they would roll it out with a rolling pin and cut it and all kinds. I don't do all that. I just take it and I just scoop it out with a spoon and just dump it in. So you dump it, literally dumplings, and that's it. And that's the dumpling in it. And then you add oil. You can do the olive oil thing if you want, but I usually if it's chicken, the chicken itself is going to have its own oils that you don't really have to add any extra oil to it. Okay, let's see, what else do we add in there? And so that's just about it, you know, chicken, water, you know, make you some dumplings out of flour and water and salt and seasonings are your salt and pepper, and you can either go with a coriander basil combination or the celery thyme combination, and you let it boil, and you know, when the dough is done and all that's done, you just take it. Usually we'll mix up some flour and some cold water, and you add that in to thicken it up as you would. And then that's it. And I'm going to be honest with you, it actually tastes better if you just let it sit in the refrigerator overnight, because then what happens is the chicken, it makes a kind of a gelatin, you know, and then you heat it up, and it tastes better the next day as a leftover. So the leftover meal that I was talking about tastes better when the leftover meal is left over. That's kind of how Southern cooking goes sometimes, you know. But anyway, so there you go, guys. Go try that out. You know, you can probably find a recipe online somewhere, but you know, the kind of cooking that we do here is we just know what to add, and we know how much, and you know, because you just do it so much. But anyway, there you go, chicken and dumplings. Well, the clock on the wall says we've had a ball, so hey, if you guys have the time, remember, go check out that greenhorngardening.com/top tools to get those 5 top tools that I use here in the Greenhorn Garden. And with that, I tell you what, I got a few outtakes for you. Take a listen to them. Let me know what you think. This is growing tips. Oh, dang it. Oh. What the heck were we supposed to? Oh, chicken and dumplings. Oh, man. Chicken and dumplings. How the heck do you make chicken and dumplings? Okay, here we go. Now say something.
Hello?
Can you hear yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to record the main segment, because that's all we need to do to do the whole show. And you just talk in this that part of the microphone now. Okay, yeah, you're gonna talk in the tip of the microphone now. I'm sorry. And what I can do is, I'm just going to have to share. All right. Let me flip to the other screen so I can see what I'm thinking. All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready. It's just like being at church on the microphone.
I know.
For the congregation.